Are you ready to confront the one truth about your own mind that has silently dictated every victory you have celebrated and every failure you have tried to forget? The hidden law that decides whether you wake up each morning feeling like a creator of your destiny or a prisoner of invisible forces you never learned how to command? And can you feel it now? The quiet tension inside you that knows there is something profoundly powerful waiting to be unlocked if only you dare to look inward without flinching, because the moment you understand what truly shapes your wealth, your peace, your future, you will realize that poverty was never just a lack of money, but a condition of thought, a state of being that lives in the shadows of the mind long before it shows itself in the world outside. And this realization, if you allow it to reach the deepest part of you, will begin to rearrange the way you see everything you have ever wanted and everything you have ever feared. There is a place inside you that has always known this, a quiet, steady presence that watches your thoughts rise and fall like waves on a dark ocean. And it has seen how certain ideas repeat themselves, how certain beliefs become habits, how certain emotions become chains, and it knows that the story of your life has been written not by chance, not by luck, but by the patterns you have allowed to take root in your consciousness, because every human being, whether they realize it or not, lives inside a private universe shaped by their dominant thoughts. And this is where Napoleon Hill and the ancient Stoics meet in a way that feels almost forbidden, because both understood that the mind is not merely a passive observer of reality, but an active architect of it. That what you hold in your imagination, what you emotionally accept as true, and what you repeatedly tell yourself becomes the blueprint from which your outer world is constructed. You have been taught to chase money, to run after opportunity, as if it were a wild animal that might escape if you do not move fast enough. But the deeper law says something far more unsettling and far more empowering, that you do not attract what you want, you attract what you are. And this is where so many people quietly sabotage themselves, because they say they want wealth, but they feel unworthy of it. They imagine success, but secretly expect failure. They speak of abundance while emotionally rehearsing scarcity, and the subconscious mind, which does not argue or reason but simply obeys, takes these emotional blueprints and turns them into lived experience, not because it wants to punish you, but because it has no choice but to reflect back what you have impressed upon it. The Stoics would have called this the inner citadel, the part of you that cannot be touched by the chaos of the outside world unless you surrender it, and Napoleon Hill would have called it the subconscious mind, the silent partner that works day and night to bring your dominant thoughts into physical form. And when you understand that these are two names for the same mysterious force, you begin to see why self-mastery is the true foundation of wealth. Because a person who cannot control their emotions, who cannot direct their thoughts, who cannot discipline their imagination, will always be a slave to circumstances, no matter how much money passes through their hands. Look at the way fear moves through your body when you think about the future, the way doubt tightens your chest when you imagine taking a bold step, the way old memories whisper that you are not enough. And notice how quickly these sensations become beliefs, and how quickly those beliefs become decisions, and how quickly those decisions become the shape of your life. Because poverty is not something that suddenly appears one day. It is slowly built through 1,000 small moments of emotional surrender, through 1,000 silent agreements with limitation, through 1,000 times you chose the comfort of what is familiar over the terror of what could be. And this is why so many people work endlessly and still feel trapped, because they are using their energy to fight the world instead of mastering themselves. Napoleon Hill spoke of desire as the starting point of all achievement, but he did not mean the shallow wanting that drifts through the mind like smoke. He meant a burning, disciplined, emotionally charged vision that becomes so real inside you that it begins to reorganize your entire psychology. And the Stoics, in their own ancient language, spoke of living in accordance with reason and nature, which means aligning your inner world with the highest version of who you can be, not the version that is ruled by impulse, fear, or social conditioning. And when these two teachings merge, Something extraordinary happens because you begin to desire without becoming desperate, to visualize without becoming delusional, to act without becoming emotionally attached to immediate results. And this is the mental posture of someone who is no longer poor, even if their bank account has not yet caught up. There is a strange peace that comes when you realize that you do not need to beg reality for permission to be powerful, that you do not need to wait for circumstances to improve before you improve your state of mind, because the Stoics taught that you always have control over your judgments and your reactions, and Napoleon Hill taught that your beliefs determine what you notice, what you attempt, and what you persist through. And when you combine these, you discover that your inner world is the only true point of leverage you have over your outer world, that everything else is secondary. And this is why the richest people are often those who have learned how to think clearly under pressure, how to remain calm in uncertainty, how to hold a vision in their mind even when the evidence around them seems to contradict it. Think about how often you have let a single bad day convince you that your entire future is doomed. How often a single rejection has made you doubt your worth. How often a single setback has caused you to lower your expectations. And notice how these moments, when left unexamined, become the quiet architects of your destiny. Because every time you emotionally agree with defeat, you impress that pattern into your subconscious, and it begins to look for ways to prove you right. Not because it is cruel, but because it is loyal to whatever you have told it to be true. And this is why the Stoics insisted on emotional discipline, not as a way to suppress feeling, but as a way to prevent the mind from being hijacked by every passing impulse. When you understand this, you begin to see money in a completely different way, not as something that gives you security, but as something that flows naturally toward a mind that is ordered, focused, and confident, because wealth is attracted to clarity the way light is attracted to open space. And poverty is drawn to confusion, fear, and internal conflict, and this is why you can give one person a fortune, and they will multiply it, and give another person the same fortune, and they will lose it, because the true difference is not in their circumstances, but in their inner structure, in the way they think, feel, and respond to life. The ancient Stoics would sit in silence and examine their own thoughts, watching them the way a general watches the movement of troops, and Napoleon Hill would urge you to do the same, to become aware of the ideas you allow to live rent-free in your mind. Because whatever you repeatedly think about becomes familiar, whatever becomes familiar begins to feel true, and whatever feels true begins to guide your actions. And this is the invisible mechanism through which your destiny is shaped, moment by moment, choice by choice, thought by thought. And when you finally see this clearly, you realize that the greatest enemy of wealth is not the economy, not other people, not bad luck, but the unexamined beliefs you've been carrying since childhood. Somewhere deep inside you is a version of yourself that is calm, focused, and unshakable. A part of you that does not panic when things go wrong, that does not become arrogant when things go right, that simply observes, adjusts, and continues forward with quiet confidence. And this is the Stoic within you, the inner emperor that Marcus Aurelius wrote about in his private journal, the part of you that cannot be corrupted by fear or seduced by distraction. And Napoleon Hill would say that this is also the part of you that can hold a definite purpose, a clear mental image of the life you want to build, and persist with faith until it becomes reality. And when these two forces are united, ambition becomes disciplined, and discipline becomes inspired. You begin to understand that wanting something intensely does not mean clinging to it desperately, that visualizing success does not mean ignoring reality, that believing in yourself does not mean denying your flaws, because true power comes from the balance between vision and acceptance, between effort and surrender, between desire and detachment. And this is the paradox that both Stoicism and Hill's philosophy point toward, that you must care deeply about your purpose while remaining emotionally free from the outcome, because attachment creates anxiety, and anxiety clouds judgment, and clouded judgment leads to self-sabotage, while calm focus allows you to see opportunities that others miss, to act decisively when others hesitate, and to persist when others give up. If you really let this sink in, you will start to feel a shift in the way you relate to your own thoughts. A subtle but powerful distancing from the voices that say you are not good enough, not smart enough, not lucky enough, and you will begin to see them not as truth, but as mental weather, temporary patterns that you do not have to obey. And this is the moment where poverty begins to lose its grip on you, because the person who can observe their own mind without being controlled by it is already richer than someone who owns 1,000 things but is enslaved by fear. Napoleon Hill spoke of faith as a state of mind that can be cultivated through repetition and emotional intensity. And the Stoics spoke of training the mind the way an athlete trains the body, through daily practice, through conscious effort, through the willingness to endure discomfort in service of a greater good. And when you see that these are two sides of the same discipline, you realize that you are not meant to drift through life reacting to whatever happens, but to actively shape your inner world so that it becomes a stable, powerful foundation from which you can create anything you choose. There is a deep, almost sacred responsibility that comes with this knowledge, because once you understand that your thoughts and emotions are not just private experiences, but creative forces, you can no longer pretend that you are a victim of your circumstances. You can no longer hide behind excuses. You can no longer blame the world for what you have not yet built. And this can feel terrifying at first because it means that your life is, in a very real sense, your own creation, but it can also feel profoundly liberating because it means that no matter where you are right now, no matter how limited things seem, there is always a way forward through the disciplined use of your mind. As you sit with these ideas, notice the way your body responds, the subtle tightening or relaxing, the flicker of excitement or resistance, because this is where real change begins, not in the words themselves, but in the emotional reactions they trigger. And if you can learn to observe these reactions without being overwhelmed by them, you are already practicing the Stoic art of inner control. And if you can choose to cultivate feelings of confidence, purpose, and calm determination, you are already engaging the Napoleon Hill principle of impressing your subconscious with the blueprint of success. And this is how a new identity is formed, quietly, steadily from the inside out. You may have spent years believing that you were behind, that you missed your chance, that the world is unfair, and in many ways the world is unfair. But the Stoics would tell you that fairness has nothing to do with your ability to live a good and meaningful life. And Hill would tell you that your past does not determine your future unless you allow it to dominate your present thoughts. And when you truly accept these ideas, you begin to feel a strange sense of relief, as if a heavy burden has been lifted from your shoulders, because you no longer have to carry the weight of regret, only the responsibility of what you choose to think and do now. This is the quiet beginning of W. Health, not the loud kind that shows off and demands attention, but the deep, stable kind that grows from self-respect, from emotional discipline, from a clear sense of purpose. And as this foundation strengthens, the external rewards will follow in their own time, because the universe, whether you see it as a mystical force or a set of psychological laws, has a way of responding to the person you become, not the person you pretend to be. And when you become someone who is calm, focused, and unwavering in their vision, opportunities begin to align in ways that feel almost magical, though they are simply the natural result of a mind that is no longer at war with itself. And so, as this first movement of our journey draws to a close, let yourself sit with the understanding that poverty and wealth are not just economic conditions, but states of consciousness, that the true battleground of your life is inside your own thoughts and emotions, and that by learning to master this inner world, by fusing the visionary power of Napoleon Hill with the serene discipline of the Stoics, you are stepping onto a path that very few people ever truly walk, a path that leads not just to material success, but to a kind of inner freedom that makes any success possible. Consider this: every single thought that enters your mind carries with it a weight, an invisible force, a subtle current that pulls at your decisions, your emotions, your actions. Most people think thoughts are harmless, fleeting, easily dismissed, but the truth is that they are far more dangerous than any external threat. Every doubt, every worry, every fleeting pang of fear, every whispered thought of limitation is a seed. And like all seeds, it grows. In some, it grows into the thorny vine of poverty, creeping through the corners of life, strangling possibility, blinding vision. In others, it grows into a tree of wealth, strong and unyielding, sheltering the spirit, shaping destiny, commanding attention from the universe. The difference is not circumstance, nor talent, nor luck. It is the mastery of the self, the relentless awareness of which thoughts are allowed to linger, which are nurtured, and which are rejected. Imagine the mind as a theater, and within this theater, there are actors. Some are your conscious thoughts, dramatic and loud, demanding applause and attention. Others are the subconscious, quiet, persistent, invisible, yet infinitely more powerful. The Stoics called this inner citadel, the unshakable fortress of reason that remains untouched by the storm outside. Napoleon Hill called it the subconscious mind, the hidden alchemist capable of transmuting desire into reality. These are not two separate forces. They are the same force seen through different lenses, the one that, when properly trained, obeys, shapes, and manifests everything that has been consistently impressed upon it. And yet, most wanderers in life do not train this mind. They let chaos reign, let emotion dictate, let distraction and despair infiltrate, and they call it fate. It is not fate. It is ignorance. Do you feel that tension rising now, the friction between who you are and who you could be? That quiet dissonance is not discomfort. It is the beginning of awakening. The mind recognizes that it has been capable of more, that it has been restrained by invisible chains of fear and conditioning. Here is where desire must be tempered with reason. The raw fire of ambition alone, without control, burns destructively, consuming the self before it builds a kingdom. This is why the Stoics insisted on emotional discipline, to temper the fire, to shape it, to direct it with precision. And yet, without desire, without the passionate longing to move mountains, the mind becomes inert, complacent, accepting mediocrity as inevitability. The alchemy occurs when desire and discipline collide, when passion is forged in the furnace of self-control, and when the subconscious mind is impressed with a vision so vivid, so emotionally charged, that it becomes a command, a blueprint, a destiny in motion. Observe yourself now. Notice the habitual patterns you cling to. Notice the repetitive thoughts that chain you to old failures, old beliefs, old fear. These are subtle but deadly. They do not shout, they whisper. They tell you to settle, to conform, to wait for permission, and you have listened. And now, as you sit here awake to the truth, the choice is yours. To continue allowing these whispers to dictate your life, or to step into the silent, disciplined authority of the inner self. To become both general and architect of your own mind, commanding the currents that once swept you helplessly along. This is where the first taste of freedom begins, understanding that the outer world cannot control you unless you allow it to, that your circumstances are powerful only to the extent that you feed them with fear, doubt, and surrender. Napoleon Hill taught that the starting point of all achievement is desire, a burning, unwavering, focused desire that organizes the mind and aligns all faculties toward a single, our objective. The Stoics would caution that such desire, if left untamed, becomes obsession, attachment, and ultimately suffering. Yet there is a higher path, a synthesis that has been overlooked by most, a path where desire is not desperation, where ambition is not anxiety, where longing is not weakness but a source of inexhaustible strength. This path requires rigorous mental training, the conscious selection of thoughts, the deliberate cultivation of emotional resilience, the unflinching observation of self, and the repeated reinforcement of belief. For your subconscious mind does not differentiate between reality and imagination. It obeys the command given most persistently, most vividly, most emotionally. Feed it with doubt, and doubt becomes destiny. Feed it with clarity, conviction, and unwavering vision, and it bends reality to your purpose. Now imagine a day in the life of a person who has mastered this. Every action is intentional, every thought scrutinized, every emotion tempered. Fear arises, but it is observed, not obeyed. Doubt appears, but it is acknowledged, dissected, and neutralized. Desire burns, but it is disciplined, focused, and unwavering. There is no chaos here, only a quiet, lethal precision. This is the mental posture that attracts wealth. The outer world, with its chaos, its unpredictability, its distractions, may rage around such a person, but it cannot penetrate the fortress of the mind. Money, opportunity, influence, recognition, all flow naturally toward a consciousness that is ordered, focused, and powerful, because the universe, seen as law, pattern, or psychological principle, responds not to what you wish externally, but to the integrity and clarity of your internal state. Consider the small choices that have brought you here. Every time you yielded to distraction, every time you allowed fear to dictate action, every time you silently agreed with limitation, you were shaping a reality that mirrored your internal state. And yet, the remarkable truth is that all of this can be reversed, reprogrammed, restructured, because the mind is pliable, because the subconscious obeys, because the inner citadel, once recognized and fortified, cannot be undermined. You are not trapped by history, by circumstance, by society, by the opinions of others. You are only limited by the degree to which you have mastered your own inner world. And mastery is not instant. It is deliberate, patient, methodical, relentless. It is training the mind until your thoughts no longer wander, until desire and reason move in synchrony, until your subconscious becomes a tireless ally rather than an unseen saboteur. Do you feel the weight of this responsibility? Most do not. Most would rather chase the illusion of wealth, the ephemeral symbols of success, while neglecting the engine that produces them, the disciplined mind. Napoleon Hill called this the mastermind principle, surrounding yourself with influences that reinforce your purpose. The Stoics would nod and remind you that the most powerful influence is internal, your own reason, your own emotional control, your own unshakable judgment. The synthesis is clear: a disciplined mind fueled by desire, aligned with a precise vision, and insulated from destructive emotional currents, is unstoppable. It is a force that attracts resources, ideas, and opportunities with a consistency that appear as almost magical to the untrained observer. But it is not magic. It is law, psychology, and mastery in perfect alignment. Now pay attention to the interplay of emotion and logic within yourself. Notice how the heart wants immediacy, speed, and gratification, while the mind calls for patience, rigor, and discipline. This tension is natural, and it is not to be eliminated but understood, integrated, and leveraged. Desire without control leads to ruin. Control without desire leads to stagnation. The union of these two, the fire of purpose tempered by the cool steel of reason, is the essence of unstoppable success. This is where the ancient wisdom of the Stoics meets the timeless laws of success laid out by Napoleon Hill. Self-mastery is the foundation of all wealth. Inner control is the true currency, and the mind is both battlefield and treasure chest. Master it, and you unlock a reality that others can only dream of. Now, let us peer into the subtle architecture of this mastery. Every successful person you admire, every fortune that seems to appear effortlessly, every life that radiates calm authority and achievement rests on this invisible foundation. They have trained their minds to operate with clarity, precision, and emotional discipline. They have impressed their subconscious with a vivid, unwavering blueprint of success. They have faced fear, doubt, and distraction repeatedly, observed them without surrender, and continued forward with unshakable focus. And in doing so, they have aligned themselves with forces that the untrained mind cannot perceive: the law of cause and effect in thought, the magnetic power of persistent desire, the silent obedience of the inner self. This is not luck. This is not talent. This is psychology made law, philosophy made action, vision made reality. Notice how even the language you speak, the thoughts you entertain, the stories you tell yourself about what is possible or impossible, are part of this architecture. Every word, every mental image, every habitual emotional reaction is a brick in the foundation of your life. Napoleon Hill emphasized the power of autosuggestion, repeatedly impressing upon the subconscious mind the exact beliefs, images, and emotions you wish to cultivate. The Stoics emphasized reflection and examination, scrutinizing every impulse, every reaction, every judgment for alignment with reason and virtue. The fusion is devastatingly effective. A mind that imagines relentlessly, desires passionately, believes unshakably, and observes without attachment becomes a magnet for every opportunity, every resource, every circumstance necessary to manifest that vision. The world bends not because it owes you anything, but because the law within you has become undeniable. And yet most stumble here because they do not understand the subtle tyranny of emotion, the quiet sabotage of unexamined thought. Anger, fear, jealousy, envy, impatience, they do not just distort perception, they destroy vision. Each uncontrolled reaction is a wound in the armor, a crack in the citadel. The Stoics teach that true power lies not in external conquest, but in internal fortitude. Napoleon Hill teaches that wealth is the natural result of aligned thought, desire, and action. Combine these principles, and you see that poverty is not merely a lack of external resources, but a failure to govern the mind, a failure to, harness desire, a failure to insist upon internal order above all else. Until you master this, until you insist upon it with relentless awareness, external success will always remain partial, fleeting, or illusory. Now begin to notice how subtle shifts in attention, in thought, in emotional posture create ripples through your consciousness. A decision to observe fear rather than obey it strengthens the citadel. A choice to visualize success with clarity and emotion impresses the subconscious. A moment of patience in the face of frustration cultivates resilience. Each action, repeated over time, compounds wealth, influence, freedom. They are emergent properties of disciplined attention and cultivated mental architecture. Nothing external can substitute for this. A fortune given to a mind untrained will vanish. A life lived without discipline will crumble. But a mind that has been honed, tested, and impressed with purpose, even in modest circumstances, becomes invincible, magnetic, unstoppable. Do you feel the subtle shift inside you now, the recognition that you have been unconsciously shaping poverty as much as opportunity, that every emotion you indulge, every thought you allow, every story you repeat, is molding your destiny? This realization can feel heavy, but it is also liberating, because it places the power squarely in your hands, not in society's hands, not in fate's hands, not in random chance, but in yours. And with this power comes responsibility. The responsibility to observe, to refine, to insist upon mastery. Desire without discipline is fire without direction. Discipline without desire is cold and inert. Combine the two, and you hold the engine of Creator on itself. This is the hidden law that Napoleon Hill whispered about, the law that the Stoics codified in the quiet journals of empires, the law that the world ignores at its peril. Understand it, live it, embody it, and poverty becomes an impossibility, not because life has changed, but because you have. Have you ever noticed how often people live their entire lives waiting for permission, waiting for the world to signal that it is safe to pursue their deepest desires, as if the universe owes them a nod of approval? And yet the true law, the hidden architecture of wealth, has never waited for anyone. It does not negotiate, it does not pause, it does not plead for recognition. It simply exists, responding silently, invisibly, to the mind that is capable of commanding it. Every idea, every image, every charged intention that you cultivate with precision becomes a seed cast into this infinite field, and it grows silently, methodically, until it manifests in forms you can see, touch, and experience. The question is, will you plant seeds that are weak, scattered, and uncertain, or will you plant seeds that are absolute, magnetic, and unwavering? Desire alone is insufficient. Vision alone is impotent. Belief alone, if untamed, becomes arrogance or delusion. And yet, when all three align in disciplined harmony, When desire burns with the purity of intent, vision glows with clarity, and belief saturates every cell of your being without faltering, the mind becomes a force of creation, a conduit between thought and reality, between inner conviction and outer manifestation. Napoleon Hill emphasized the importance of definiteness of purpose, the relentless, emotionally invested clarity about exactly what you intend to achieve. The Stoics remind us that the mind's focus cannot be scattered by whim, impulse, or fear. It must be concentrated, singular, unbroken. These two principles, when fused, create a lens so precise that nothing in the universe can escape it. It is not magic. It is alignment. It is physics and psychology intertwined. It is the invisible hand that shapes fortune, reputation, and influence, wielded from within before it ever touches the external world. Consider for a moment the subtleties of emotional attachment. Most people think that to desire intensely is to cling, and to cling is to suffer. And yet, here is the paradox. You must desire with intensity, but you must remain detached from the outcome. You must act as if the future already exists while refusing to surrender to the anxiety of waiting. The Stoics taught that happiness and freedom arise not from external reward, but from the alignment of judgment and action with reason. Napoleon Hill taught that faith, vividly held in the subconscious, compels the world to conform to your inner state. The fusion is not abstract, it is kinetic, practical, and merciless in its logic. Control your mind, master your desires, direct your beliefs, and the universe conspires. Fail to master yourself, and the universe remains silent, indifferent, reflecting only the chaos of your inner world back into your experience. There is a certain gravity to understanding this, a weight that presses against the chest, the recognition that every moment wasted on distraction, complaint, envy, or fear is a moment in which you reinforce the architecture of limitation. The mind, if left unguided, drifts to war. Comfort toward ease, toward the familiar patterns that have always kept you constrained, is a subtle seduction, almost invisible, like a fog that softens the edges of ambition until all that remains is inertia. The antidote is rigorous, disciplined awareness, noticing every thought, every impulse, every emotional reaction, and choosing deliberately which to nurture and which to discard. Desire becomes a sword only when the hand that wields it is steady, deliberate, and unshakable. Vision becomes a magnet only when the mind is free from internal interference. Belief becomes a law only when it has been hammered into the subconscious with precision, repetition, and emotional intensity. Notice how your imagination feels as you contemplate this. The Stoics believed imagination could be trained, constrained, and directed. Napoleon Hill believed imagination was the laboratory of the mind, where all plans, inventions, and fortunes are first conceived. Together, these truths reveal that your mental images are not idle fantasies. They are the first drafts of reality. Every scene you rehearse, every vivid visualization you allow, every emotion you pair with that image instructs the subconscious mind to find pathways to its realization. But the critical factor, often overlooked, is emotional detachment. You must feel as if the success is inevitable, while simultaneously releasing desperation, anxiety, and attachment. You must hold the vision with unwavering faith while remaining unshaken by the chaos, the doubt, and the delays that the world inevitably presents. This is not weakness. It is the supreme strength of disciplined patience. Now think about persistence, not the low kind, which is merely stubbornness, clinging to hope without strategy, without adaptation. Real persistence is an intimate dance between desire and discipline, between vision and reason. It is the relentless follow-through of a mind that knows its blueprint, trusts the laws of cause and effect, and refuses to abandon the internal architecture that guarantees success. The Stoics taught that obstacles are not interruptions. They are the raw material of mastery. Napoleon Hill taught that defeat is temporary, a signal to redirect thought and effort, not to retreat into despair. Persistence, in this synthesis, is the disciplined alignment of thought, emotion, and action in accordance with purpose. It is the quiet accumulation of momentum in a universe that rewards precision, clarity, and unwavering faith. Each act of measured persistence impresses the subconscious further, bending reality toward the design held in the mind's eye. Consider your own fears: fear of failure, fear of scarcity, fear of judgment. These are not abstract forces. They are chemical and neurological patterns that have been rehearsed thousands of times, reinforced by habit, environment, and social conditioning. To confront them is not merely courageous. It is a surgical act of mental engineering. You must observe fear without surrender, acknowledge it without internalizing, and act in its presence with calm authority. Here is where the Stoic principle of emotional sovereignty becomes critical. Your inner citadel must remain untouchable by transient sensations, impulses, and anxieties. Napoleon Hill would call this the cultivation of faith in your definite purpose, the unwavering belief that regardless of the evidence of the senses, your vision will manifest if thought, emotion, and action are aligned. Together, these practices transform fear from a tyrant into a teacher, from a barrier into a tool. Let us examine the subtle art of belief. Most people believe superficially. They say the words, they nod in agreement, they wish for things, but belief without conviction is ineffective. Real belief saturates every neuron, every fiber of consciousness. It is a quiet, steady flame that persists despite contradiction, despite delay, despite opposition. The subconscious mind obeys the language of conviction, not whim, not hope, not doubt. Napoleon Hill taught that autosuggestion, repeated with emotion, ingrains belief at the cellular level. The Stoics taught that judgments and impressions must be scrutinized, purified, and aligned with reason. When belief is fully integrated, it becomes the magnetic field of the mind, drawing circumstances, people, and resources in precise correspondence with the vision it holds. Without this, desire is fleeting, vision is clouded, and the outer world remains indifferent. Notice how many people cling to hope but reject discipline, or chase opportunity but ignore inner alignment. They expect external events to deliver results while their inner architecture remains chaotic. Wealth in this sense is not accidental. It is emergent. It emerges naturally from a mind that is disciplined, emotionally balanced, and unwavering in its purpose. Poverty, conversely, is emergent from a mind that is scattered, reactive, and enslaved by unexamined impulses. This is the forbidden knowledge. No economic crisis, no lack of opportunity, no external injustice can determine your ultimate state unless you allow the mind to be compromised. Master the inner world, and the outer world becomes a reflection of the order, focus, and integrity cultivated within. Fail to master the inner, and external success remains a fragile illusion, always at risk, always temporary. Now focus on your own imagination, the mental images you hold about your life. Most drift through visions shaped by fear, envy, or social expectation. But you are being invited to hold a different image, a deliberate, disciplined, emotionally charged vision of who you are meant to be. See it vividly, feel it as real. Saturate it with faith and calm conviction. Pair it with detachment from immediate results, with acceptance of delay and resistance, and watch as the subconscious mind begins to work, silently and efficiently, to align circumstances with this blueprint. This is the hidden art of manifestation, where thought, emotion, and disciplined action converge. This is how poverty is reversed at its source, not by chasing money, but by commanding the mind that produces all outcomes. Do not underestimate the necessity of repeated reinforcement. Every visualization, every affirmation, every deliberate act of emotional control strengthens the neural pathways that support success. Each moment of clarity, each refusal to indulge destructive emotion, each act aligned with purpose, compounds in ways that are invisible yet unstoppable. Napoleon Hill emphasized the repetition of positive suggestion to the subconscious. The Stoics emphasized daily reflection, journaling, and meditation to purify judgment. Together, these practices cultivate a mind that does not drift, does not flink, H, and does not yield. This is the mind of someone who will never be poor, not merely financially, but spiritually, psychologically, and philosophically. Imagine the mind as a battlefield, a vast invisible landscape where every impulse, every emotion, every fleeting thought rises like a soldier demanding attention, seeking to influence action. Most humans drift through this battlefield unaware, letting chaos dictate their movements, letting fear, doubt, and habit determine every step, every choice, every decision. And yet, in this very battlefield lies the hidden law of power, the secret architecture of success, mastery over self, absolute command of thought and emotion, the deliberate imposition of order upon the inner world. Napoleon Hill called it the control of the subconscious through focused desire, faith, and persistent action. The Stoics called it the inner citadel, the fortress of reason that cannot be breached by circumstance, insult, or fortune. Here, in the fusion of these teachings, lies the truth that no external obstacle can withstand the mind fully aligned with its purpose. Notice how desire burns within you. It is raw, primal, urgent, yet untrained desire is like an untamed firestorm, consuming everything in its path without building anything lasting. To harness it, to make it a tool rather than a threat, requires a rigor that most avoid. The Stoics would advise temperance, the deliberate cooling of emotional excess, the cultivation of calm under pressure. Napoleon Hill would demand persistence, unwavering focus, repeated mental reinforcement, and absolute faith. Alone, each is incomplete. Desire without discipline is chaos. Discipline without desire is inert. But fused, they form the engine of unstoppable creation, a force that silently shapes reality, commanding circumstance, opportunity, and fortune without force, without need for approval, without apology. It moves quietly like a river carving a canyon, persistent and inevitable. Observe the patterns of your own behavior, the subtle ways in which fear or laziness or distraction has determined outcomes you later regretted. These moments are not trivial. They are the proof of the hidden law at work. The mind obeys the dominant patterns impressed upon it. Repetition, emotion, and belief are the architects of destiny. Every thought you indulge, every fear you entertain, every impulse you act upon or suppress sculpts your subconscious and therefore your external world. Napoleon Hill understood this when he wrote of autosuggestion and definiteness of purpose. The Stoics understood this when they emphasized reflection, examination, and self-discipline. This is why the poor, the unfulfilled, the frustrated, the anxious are not merely victims of circumstance, they are victims of unexamined thought, of surrendered discipline, of misdirected desire. They have impressed limitation upon themselves, and reality, faithful and silent, simply reflects it back. Now consider vision, not the vague, passing wish that drifts through your mind in idle moments, but the vivid, emotionally charged picture of your life fully realized. Napoleon Hill called this the mental image of definite purpose. The Stoics would call it the alignment of mind with reason and virtue. Together they reveal that vision must be precise, emotionally integrated, and relentlessly reinforced. The subconscious D does not distinguish fantasy from reality. It obeys intensity and repetition. Pair this with detachment from immediate outcome, as the Stoics insist, and you have a mind that commands without desperation, that attracts without manipulation, that persists without attachment. Desire becomes magnetic, belief becomes law, action becomes inevitable. Poverty, by contrast, is the product of unaligned thought, scattered vision, and surrender to impulse. Recognize this. Your inner clarity is the currency of all external wealth. Do you feel the subtle tension rising now, the friction between who you are and who you must become? This tension is not discomfort, it is awakening. It is the whisper of your own potential calling you to mastery. Most will flee from it, retreating into comfort, distraction, and self-deception. But you cannot flee without betraying your own mind. To follow this path requires courage, because it exposes every weakness, every habitual surrender, every unexamined belief. The Stoics taught that the obstacle is the path. The very resistance you fear is the material of your strength. Napoleon Hill would say that every failure, every rejection, every moment of seeming defeat is feedback, a signal to refine your blueprint, recalibrate your focus, and persist with renewed intensity. Together, these principles teach a terrifying and liberating truth. Mastery is forged in adversity, wealth is sculpted from disciplined desire, and the mind is the crucible in which all outcomes are determined. Now, let us examine the interplay of persistence and patience. Most people confuse persistence with stubbornness and patience with inaction. But true persistence is methodical, disciplined, strategic, unrelenting. It is the continual alignment of thought, emotion, and action with purpose, even when results are invisible, delayed, or opposed by circumstance. Patience is not passive. It is the quiet confidence that comes from absolute faith in the law of cause and effect, in the inevitability of alignment between internal mastery and external manifestation. Napoleon Hill emphasized persistent effort guided by definite purpose. The Stoics emphasized calm endurance guided by reason. Synthesize these, and you possess the mental architecture that produces unassailable success. Obstacles become information. Resistance becomes a teacher. Delay becomes refinement. And the mind, serene, disciplined, and focused, operates as both engine and compass, unstoppable in the execution of its vision. Consider how often emotion has betrayed you. Anger, envy, fear, desire uncontrolled, these forces are not neutral. They are chemical tyrants, capable of directing your life toward poverty even when knowledge, intention, and opportunity suggest otherwise. The Stoics understood this and insisted upon observation, detachment, and regulation. Napoleon Hill understood this and demanded repetition, emotional intensity, and faith to impress the subconscious mind correctly. The fusion is the ultimate law. Master the emotional currents within you, or they will master you. This mastery is not repression. It is skill, the ability to feel without being carried, to desire without clinging, to act without surrendering clarity. This is the mind that produces not temporary wealth, but lasting fortune, unshakable influence, and profound self-respect. Now, think about the subtle mechanics. Thought and belief. Every idea that gains repeated attention gains power. Every thought that evokes emotion becomes a command to the subconscious. Every conviction held against doubt, delay, or contradiction hardens into a magnetic field, drawing circumstances, resources, and opportunities into alignment. Napoleon Hill spoke of the magnetic power of belief. The Stoics spoke of reason, judgment, and the disciplined mind. Together, these principles reveal that wealth, influence, and achievement are not accidental. They are emergent, predictable, and scientifically grounded. Poverty, in contrast, is emergent from chaos, indecision, fear, and emotional surrender. The law is neutral. It rewards alignment and punishes internal disorder, not desire or effort alone. Observe your habits. Notice how repetition and emotional tone have shaped your perception of possibility. See how often you have unconsciously reinforced limitation through resignation, complaint, and distraction. Now imagine replacing each act of surrender with deliberate focus, each indulgence in fear with conscious courage, each moment of hesitation with decisive, disciplined action. Imagine a mind so trained, so aligned, so magnetic, that external resistance bends effortlessly around it. Imagine a consciousness where desire burns without desperation, belief saturates without arrogance, vision directs without distortion, and persistence continues despite apparent defeat. This is the mind of someone who has broken free from poverty, not merely economic, but mental, emotional, and spiritual. Notice the paradox. Detachment amplifies power. Calm amplifies influence. Restraint amplifies desire. Patience amplifies persistence. This is the fusion of Stoic philosophy and Napoleon Hill's laws. The world outside does not determine your wealth. Your inner world does. Poverty is not the absence of money. It is the presence of ungoverned thought, untrained emotion, and unaligned desire. Success is not a reward. It is the reflection of disciplined mastery impressed upon reality. And the path is not mystical. It is precise, measurable, and deliberate. Observe, reflect, align, repeat, persist, act. This is the law that governs all fortune. This is the secret that no one will teach freely. This is why those who understand it will never be poor again. Have you ever felt the quiet, almost imperceptible shift that occurs when you realize your mind is not merely observing reality, but creating it? Most people live their lives under the illusion that events happen to them, that fortune is random, that wealth and opportunity are given or withheld by some external authority. And yet, the law has always been patient, impartial, indifferent to circumstance, waiting only for your inner alignment to signal readiness. Napoleon Hill taught that what the mind can conceive and believe, it can achieve. The Stoics whispered that the only true power lies in mastery over oneself, in unyielding reason and disciplined judgment. And here, at the intersection of these two paths, lies the revelation. The world outside is simply the reflection of the world within. Change your mind, and the universe conspires to match it. Fail to master your mind, and the universe obeys your surrender. Consider faith not as blind hope, not as wishful thinking, but as a deliberate, emotionally charged state of certainty. Napoleon Hill insisted that faith, repeated and reinforced through autosuggestion, impresses the subconscious mind, compelling it to work tirelessly toward manifestation. The Stoics would nod, recognizing that reason paired with disciplined emotional control allows the individual to act as if the outcome is inevitable, even when external evidence suggests otherwise. Faith in this fusion is not naive, it is tactical. It is the recognition that the subconscious mind is your silent partner, and that every thought, image, and feeling impresses a pattern that will inevitably seek expression in reality. This is how the invisible becomes visible, the internal blueprint becomes external architecture. Notice the tension between desire and detachment. Most humans misunderstand this relationship. They cling desperately to what they want, and the mind, sensing attachment, creates anxiety, blocks, and misdirection. The Stoics called this surrender to passion. Napoleon Hill called it misalignment of thought and emotion. But when desire is tempered with detachment, when vision is held vividly yet calmly, the mind operates like a magnet, drawing opportunities, alliances, and resources with invisible but unerring precision. It is the art of holding fire in one hand and water in the other, passionate yet balanced, ambitious yet calm, relentless yet serene. This is the mental posture of those who never know poverty, because their inner alignment directs the outer world effortlessly. Observe your own habits of thought. How often have you let fear, doubt, or impatience dictate action? How often have you allowed social expectation, history, or temporary failure to rewrite the rules of your life? Each surrendered meant each emotional compromise, each passive acceptance of limitation is a deposit into the account of poverty. But this is not fatal, it is reversible. The mind, once impressed with discipline, clarity, and conviction, can reverse these deposits, drawing opportunity, wealth, and influence as naturally as gravity pulls objects toward the earth. Napoleon Hill would call this creating a definite plan, a blueprint to follow with faith and persistence. The Stoics would call it governance of the mind, the deliberate shaping of judgment, belief, and emotional reaction. The fusion is alchemical. Inner mastery becomes outer success, and the law obeys without exception. Now consider imagination, the laboratory of reality. Most people let imagination drift aimlessly, conjuring fear, limitation, or illusion. But controlled, disciplined imagination is the birthplace of all creation. Hill spoke of visualization, of mental rehearsal so vivid it becomes indistinguishable from reality to the subconscious. The Stoics spoke of envisioning outcomes while remaining unattached to circumstance, cultivating reason and foresight. Together, these principles teach that imagination, guided by desire and tempered with reason, is a force of manifestation, Every vivid, emotionally charged mental image impresses the subconscious mind, compelling it to reorganize thoughts, habits, and actions toward realization. Wealth, opportunity, and influence emerge naturally, not because of luck, but because your inner reality has demanded it. Pay attention to persistence. True persistence is not stubborn repetition, it is relentless alignment of thought, emotion, and action over time. Obstacles are inevitable, setbacks unavoidable, external resistance constant. But the person who persists, who continues with unwavering faith, calm judgment, and disciplined action, impresses the subconscious mind so deeply that reality itself bends in response. Napoleon Hill called this the habit of going the extra mile. The Stoics would call it endurance in accordance with reason. Persistence, when combined with inner clarity, detachment, and disciplined desire, becomes unstoppable. It is the invisible engine that moves mountains, creates fortune, and attracts allies, resources, and opportunities with perfect precision. Notice how emotion must be governed. Anger, envy, fear, desperation, and attachment are not neutral. They are forces that shape destiny. The Stoics taught that ungoverned emotion destroys judgment, while Hill taught that belief and emotional intensity imprint reality. Together, these teachings reveal that to create wealth, one must cultivate emotional sovereignty, feeling intensely but acting with calm authority, desiring passionately but remaining unattached, believing fully but judging clearly. The mind, trained in this way, becomes a force of creation so potent that external obstacles are rendered irrelevant. Consider now the alignment of thought and action. Most people act without thought, think without alignment, or hope without action. But the law is precise. What is impressed upon the mind must be matched with consistent, deliberate action to manifest fully. Desire without action is fantasy. Action without inner clarity is chaos. Faith without discipline is illusion. But when thought, emotion, and action converge, when vision is vivid, belief unwavering, and steps deliberate, inner blueprint shapes reality with unerring fidelity. This is how the mind commands the universe. This is how poverty is reversed at its root, by mastering the invisible currents that shape every outcome. Notice the paradox of control and surrender. You must command your mind ruthlessly and yet release attachment to results. You must desire passionately and yet remain unshaken by delay or resistance. You must act decisively and yet maintain serenity. The Stoics called this living in accordance with reason. Napoleon Hill called it impressing the subconscious with definite purpose. Together, they form a synthesis: desire directed by discipline, faith strengthened by calm, action guided by clarity. This is not a theory, it is a law. It is invisible, silent, merciless, and inevitable. Master it, and poverty ceases to exist. Not merely financial poverty, but mental, emotional, and spiritual poverty. Reflect on your inner state. Are your thoughts disciplined, or do they wander? Are your emotions tempered, or do they govern you? Is your vision vivid and precise, or vague and wishful? Are your actions deliberate, or scattered and reactive? Every moment of attention given to misalignment reinforces limitation. Every moment of deliberate focus strengthens mastery. The difference between those who are perpetually poor and those who command wealth and influence lies not in opportunity, talent, or luck, but in the inner architecture of the mind, the inner citadel, the subconscious blueprint. The fusion of desire, belief, and disciplined action. Now feel the weight of this understanding, that you are the creator of your own experience, that every thought, emotion, and actio shapes reality, that wealth is not bestowed but emerged from internal alignment, and that poverty is not imposed but chosen through surrender to fear, doubt, and distraction. This is the psychological law, the metaphysical principle, the hidden truth that Napoleon Hill whispered about and the Stoics codified in silence. Mastery of self produces inevitability. It is relentless. It is impartial. It is inevitable. And now that you know it, the choice is clear. Ask yourself, how long will you wander half awake, surrendering to fear, distraction, and the illusion of limitation before you take command of the most powerful force in existence, the mind that thinks, feels, and wills. The truth is simple, yet terrifying in its clarity. The world outside has never dictated your life. It cannot. It only responds to the architecture of your inner world. Every thought, every belief, every fleeting impulse you have entertained has been molding your reality like invisible clay, shaping circumstances, opportunities, and outcomes. And now you stand at a precipice. The law of cause and effect waits, impartial, merciless, and precise. It will respond to you, not to anyone else, not to circumstance, not to luck, but to the alignment of your mind, your desire, your vision, your discipline. Will you step forward and command it, or retreat into the inertia of surrender? Visualize yourself as the architect of your life, the commander of the invisible forces that shape reality. Imagine every desire you hold, every ambition that stirs in your chest, aligned with unwavering clarity, saturated with belief and tempered with calm detachment. This is no longer a mere wish. It is a declaration to the subconscious mind, a signal to the universe, a blueprint etched into the very fabric of your consciousness. Napoleon Hill called it a definiteness of purpose, the relentless focus on a singular vision. The Stoics called it the fortification of the mind, the unshakable fortress of reason and self-command. Together, they reveal a terrifying, liberating truth. Poverty, limitation, and mediocrity are not external. They are the result of surrendered thought, mismanaged desire, and untempered emotion. Reverse this. Align, command, manifest. Now, feel the fire of desire balanced with the stillness of reason. Feel ambition sharpened by detachment, faith strengthened by calm, persistence reinforced by clarity. Observe every fear that rises, every doubt that surfaces, every impulse that tempts surrender, and let them pass without compromise. These are no longer masters. They are teachers, silent, temporary, powerless before the citadel you have built within. Napoleon Hill would say to impress the subconscious mind with repetition, emotion, and belief. The Stoics would whisper that judgment, clarity, and inner sovereignty allow no intrusion from chaos. Together, they form a law so potent that your mind becomes the magnet and the compass of your destiny, drawing opportunity, wealth, and influence into alignment with precision. Consider your vision now. Is it vivid enough to ignite your subconscious? Does it stir your desire so strongly that it burns without consuming you? Does it hold you in disciplined attention without attachment? If so, you have begun the alchemy. If not, refine it, repeat it, feel it. Saturate your consciousness with it until it is no longer optional. It is in vita. Blah. The mind does not lie. It obeys the law impressed upon it. Desire, belief, vision, discipline, persistence. Align these, and you have created a force the universe cannot ignore. Doubt, fear, and distraction may attempt to whisper, but they have no authority here. You have chosen sovereignty. You have chosen command. You have chosen mastery. Now act. Do not wait for circumstance, for permission, for ease, or for perfect timing. The laws of success and the principles of self-mastery operate in the now, in the deliberate, the conscious, the uncompromising application of thought, emotion, and action. Each step you take toward your vision, no matter how small, impresses the subconscious mind further, strengthens the citadel, and bends reality incrementally toward your purpose. Hesitation is a betrayal. Indecision is a surrender. Every moment without aligned action is a missed opportunity, a reinforcement of old limitation. To act now is not optional. It is inevitable for those who understand the law. Embrace persistence like a weapon. Obstacles are not interruptions, they are your proving ground. Resistance is not punishment, it is feedback. Failure is not defeat, it is information. Every trial, every moment of challenge, every shadow of doubt is the raw material from which the mind of the unconquerable is forged. Napoleon Hill said, "Every adversity carries with it the seed of an equal or greater benefit." The Stoics would add, "The impediment to action advances action. What stands in the way becomes the way." Internalize this. Let it pierce the marrow of your understanding. Obstacles are meaningless to the mind that has aligned vision, desire, belief, and discipline. They are simply the signal to act with greater precision, greater calm, and greater authority. Feel the immense gravity of your own potential. You are the sum of every thought you allow, every desire you cultivate, every belief you insist upon, and every action you take in alignment with reason and purpose. You are capable of creating wealth, influence, and freedom that defy external expectation. You are capable of commanding circumstances, directing people, and producing results that appear miraculous to those untrained in the inner law. But this requires one thing: mastery of the self. Not tomorrow, not when conditions are convenient. Now, this moment, this thought, this choice. And so, take command. Align your desire with vision. Saturate belief with emotional intensity and calm detachment. Strengthen persistence with patient endurance. Temper ambition with reason. Observe fear, doubt, and distraction without surrender. Impress your subconscious mind until it obeys without hesitation. Act deliberately, repeatedly, with unwavering focus. Build your inner citadel. Fortify it with clarity, discipline, and purpose. Step into your sovereignty as the commander of thought, emotion, and action. Do this relentlessly.